What up, what up, what up, everybody? Welcome to Today's the Day. Man, this episode guest, I couldn't be more excited. Most of you guys probably already know why at this point. You've been mentioned in literally every episode that we've released as a huge influence in people's lives. So first and foremost, before I dive into bio or anything, just thank you so much, Casey Baugh, for being here. I love you. You are literally, and we'll dive into why and how, but by far one of, if not the most influential people in my life. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day with Zack Andersen. What up, what up, what up? Welcome to Today's the Day. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Today's the Day. Much love to everybody. Today's the day. Best friends, dude, I would die for you 100%. So I love you and thank you for being here first and foremost.
I'm excited to be here and I'm proud of you. There's nothing that gets me more excited than to see you thriving and succeeding. And so, this is just another chapter in the book, but you're kind of doing it on all fronts. So one, excited to be here, and two, just proud of everything you're doing. I'm cheering for you from the sidelines.
Thank you. I've always felt that. And we're going to dive into that. I've got a few stories that I think will go a long way. But before we get into any of that, anyone who doesn't know Casey, so if you don't know who Casey Baugh is, most of you guys probably will know, or if you don't know, you're about to. I've known you for a very long time, and I've always been incredibly impressed with you, so I don't want this to come across the wrong way. In reading your bio and writing this out, I was like, holy shit. I was like, I guess maybe because I'm around you every day, it's just so, or I'm just surrounded by your presence in some way or another. It comes across as like, oh yeah, Casey Baugh just did another deal for this much. Like, oh yeah, no big deal. And then I go back and read, I'm like, holy crap. So just to give everyone kind of a quick, very, very quick bio, this doesn't even scrape the surface of what you've really gone and done. But you spent 13 years at Vivint, where you helped go, and you were one of the key leaders helping grow the revenue from 30 million to $1 billion plus, also transitioning the company public, right?
Yep.
Along that timeline, you also assisted in transitioning Vivint Solar public, right? Since then, you're the co-founder and managing partner at Sandlot Partners, which is a big majority of your time right now. What that is, it's a private investment firm that's gone and deployed over $350 million of capital, which is, again, one of those things we're reading that I was like, holy crap. You're a general partner and co-founder of Vineyard Manufactured Housing Investment Group, which a couple really cool things. Kind of the cooler one that stood out to me, that group alone has gone and helped provide housing for over 100,000 families from what I was reading, which is unreal. I was lucky enough to be a part of that super early a few years back, and you guys have deployed over 2.2 billion across 260 different manufactured home communities, which is crazy as well. You're the co-founder and co-owner of Greenlight Restaurant Group, which invests and builds restaurants like Cut Bop, Pizzeria 712, Communal, Black Sheep Cafe, Station 22, 5-Star Barbecue, and more. And then kind of the coolest thing on here, lifelong learner, which we're going to talk a lot about. You, since I've known you, and I think I actually remember the year that you made it a goal to read a book a week and started posting it and being really, really active with it and voicing it to people. Reading a book a week, which you still continue to do. You've completed 20 plus trips, which is crazy because I didn't realize it was that many, to go attend Harvard Business School programs. And then you're also, which I sneak into occasionally, one of the entrepreneurship teachers at Brigham Young University. So just voluntarily going and teaching out there, which is so sick. And I sneak into that every single year actually, which I love. And that's, dude, the list goes on and on and on. And there's plenty of other things I want to go and dive into. But if you don't know Casey, now you kind of do. And then a little bit more to kind of preface going into the conversations we're going to dive into, kind of our history, so everyone kind of understands the background of that. Casey, the reason I say you are one of the most influential, if not the most influential, you found me at a really, really kind of key time in my life when I was really happy. I've lived a really good life. I've been super lucky growing up, as far as I've always had really good family support and everything like that. But I was dead broke. I think I was 15 years old or 16 years old in high school. I think I was just 16. Dead broke. You walked into my friend's house. I'd never met you. I was chilling with my friend's parents at Alex Dunn's house, and you came in. And immediately, I think within 10 minutes of knowing me, you offered me a job, which I still don't know why, or maybe you just had lost whoever had done it. You offered me a job cleaning your cars, stocking your fridge, right? So that was really cool, awesome, right? I was making a little bit of money, but the really, really, really impactful part, about 3 months into doing that, you invited me to go through and read a book, and I was like, this is kind of weird. And I had heard about my buddy doing it because you'd offered it to high school football teams, you'd offered it to different church groups, and my buddy had read a couple books for you. But the weird part was you would pay me $100 for every book report that I brought you back, right? And to kind of give you a glimpse into my headspace, which obviously you know, I was stoked making $10 an hour stocking your fridge and driving your car to the car wash every week. Like I was fired up with that. That was enough for me. And my outlook on life was literally to the next week. Like if I was making $50 that week, I was stoked to go and make another $50 from you the next week. And then these books, that $100, I was like, I can read a book a week. And come to find out, I was nowhere near as good of a reader as I thought. It took me a lot longer. But I ended up really taking advantage of that. And to be honest, when I started doing that, I did it for the $100 every time. First 5 or 6 books, I literally did it to go and get a $100 bill from you. And I was scared shitless presenting a book report to you because you knew these books inside out. You'd ask me all these questions. I felt like I needed to go way more prepared than a business presentation for a class. But the really, really cool part about that, and kind of the point of me explaining this, is that is the only time and the most pivotal breakthrough in my life where I started looking at life through a super, super, super different lens. I started looking very long term. I started looking at money differently. I started looking at success differently. I started believing in myself more. And you were having me read books like As a Man Thinketh, The Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, a lot of these books, which we'll go and dive into. So more than anything, to give everyone a little bit of background on me and you, that is where my life with meaning started, I think.
That's so cool.
Right, which is, it's crazy to go and think back. I mean, rolling into that, my first question is just like, why? Like you walked in, I looked pretty similar to how I look now. I looked a lot more like a girl, high-pitched voice, little 16-year-old kid, total punk. Like I all I could think about was, am I going to go to school tomorrow or not? And most of the time I didn't, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I'll give you a job. You can drive my $200,000 Porsche up to the car wash every day. You just got your driver's license, don't wreck it, right? And then my Raptor and then my wife's G-Wagon, go for it. Like, and you can stock my fridge and then I'll pay you. Plus I'm going to pay you $100 and give you my time every Sunday to come and do a book report with me. Like, why? Like, seriously, what?
So my dad, when I was young, he did the same thing for me when I was 15, 16 years old. And he paid me $100 per book back then, which I've changed my amount now. I'm paying like $300. You know, inflation.
That's sick.
Is kind of messing with the amount. And so, but my dad was paying me $100 like 25 years ago, which that was a lot of money. And so the same thing for me, I was like, and I've always kind of been coin operated. So I'm like, $100, like all day long, that's easy money.
Yeah.
And he started me out with the easy ones. He started me out with As a Man Thinketh and, you know, Richest Man in Babylon. And they started progressively getting kind of more substance. But I remember it was the same thing. It was the foundation for me of when my life view started changing on the world. And it's just always been so impactful for me. And I've just kind of never lost that love of learning. And I look at, you know, the life that I live today, and it's a direct outcome of thoughts that I had somewhere over the last 25 years. And the only reason that I had those thoughts is because I introduced them through, you know, thought leaders and these books. And, you know, back then you didn't have Audible and you didn't have, you know, podcasts like you do. And you didn't have, you know, it was books. Like that was what you got. And so like all of the mediums of education that we have today just didn't exist back then, even 25 years ago. And so it's kind of been something that, you know, it changed my life. And so it's kind of been something that I've done. I had guys at my house last night, the next generation of 16-year-old kids going to Orem High School, that showed up at my house and, you know, got the same books that you read. And it's been interesting because I've done it a lot of times, 1,000+ times, 1,000 different people. Very few read them. It's the craziest thing. It's like,
why do you think that is? Why do you think a 16-year-old presented with that, where it's like,
I don't know. Like I don't know. I really don't know, other than very few fulfill. And like but the ones who do, it changes their life. There's been a handful of people like you that never stop doing it, and you just see their like trajectory in life just never stop. You know, they go from like place to place, you know, level 1 to level 4 to level 7 to level like, and they just like grow. And, you know, but I think that's, you know, reflective in a lot of things. You know, you take sales and there's that Pareto principle where 80% of the results come from 20% of the people, and then 96% of the results come from 4% of the people. And it's just, that's just how life works. A small number of people make most of the money, and a small number of people produce most of the goods and the results. And same thing, it's a small number of people actually are willing to go do the work to continue to grow. And
so what would you say, because you're right, and like one of the most important, I guess, philosophies you ever taught me was that's the top 20% make 80% of the money. So every room I go into, and this was back when I was broke and I was doing terrible and I was not making money at all. I would walk into a room and be like, holy crap, those are the two that make all the money. Like I want to be in their shoes. What do they all have in common? They're that top 20%, or the top 4% more specifically, top 1%. Like what do they all do?
You know, it's a couple things. Like the first one is just, it's a choice. Like you can't win if you don't keep score. So most people don't even know they're playing in the game. Like they're just kind of living, they're like in a simulation. They're just kind of going through life without like stepping back and realizing like I am the creator of my life.
Yeah.
And so like the very first step, you know, step number 1 is to like identify that I'm the author of this story.
Yeah.
And then you write the story, and then you go execute your plan. I mean, it's 7 habits. Those are the first 3 habits. It's be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first. And that's most people never do that. And so the only way that you can kind of be a top percentile performer is 1, identify where you're going, 2, put a plan, and then 3, go work the plan. And most people don't. And just the default result by not choosing where you want to go, by definition, you're going somewhere else. You're just going to get what life gives you, and it's not going to be in your benefit.
You're just living by default.
No, and it's not going to serve you well.
Yeah, 100%. So on that, I guess touching on it, because a lot of people listening, it's like, okay, books, and I think it's becoming more popular, and correct me if I'm wrong, I really do think younger generations is becoming more popular to go and consume good things.
I mean, I hope so.
Which
if young people consume good things, you're going to have a really productive society in the future.
Yep.
And if they don't, you won't like it. So it's like, I hope that it's like in vogue and like people are fired up and they're doing it, because it like that's what changes the world is people. And the only way that they're going to change the world is if they have the tools and have the skills and have the right philosophy on life and value creation and service and meaning. And if you don't, you're not going to do anything significant.
1,000%. So I think in hearing that, a lot of people hear that and it's kind of overwhelming. It's like, okay, like where do you start? And I think a lot of people have the idea of like, oh, it's a really good idea to go and be productive and listen to these things or read these things. What, in your opinion, first 3 books, start with these, that'll get you going the right direction, and the rest will fall into place? Because that's what I found is once you get going in the right direction, stuff just kind of compiles. Like it starts happening for you in a really weird way. But what would be those first 3?
The first book, 100% would be As a Man Thinketh, because you can read it in 45 minutes. And it's completely, I don't know of a book more profound than that book. I went back and, you know, we adopted a couple of these little kids over the last 3 years. And we're always in this situation of how do you give to the birth mom without creating entitlement and enabling, you know,
like crippling her
dependence. Yep. Yeah. And so something we came up with is, well, let's do the book club, except let's pay $1,000 a book. You know, like let's actually like give some homework and put the incentive big enough that it's like they can get it anytime they want to get it. They just have to go do some work.
Yeah.
And one of the birth moms, her name's Brianna, Texas mom. She reads this book and she's giving us the book report, and I'm just like, it's like my ears are on fire. I'm like, that's incredible. And I'm like, I've read this book 100 times.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm hearing it for the first time. And so, that for sure is like, if you read that book and implement, it'll change your life. It's just about, that, men are eager to change their circumstance, but they're unwilling to change themselves.
Yeah.
So they remain bound. And that's kind of like, that's life. We want the outcome without changing personally, so we don't get the outcome. And, on and on and on, just gems like that. The second one that, if you want to be wealthy, if you care about being financially independent, which I have so many views on that, but I just think, money is a magnifier to make you more of what you are. And if you have a lot of money, you're going to be more of what you are. If you want sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you're going to have more of those three things. But if you want to go make a dent on the world, you'll actually have a much bigger platform to go do good in the world. And so money's not good or bad. It just allows you to be more of what you are.
Yeah.
But there's laws with money. And if you understand, apply the laws, you'll be wealthy. And if you don't, you won't. And most people aren't, because the tax system is built to not make you wealthy. It's built to actually redistribute cash back to everybody else. And so the second one is just the mindset of wealth. And so I do Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's, 70 or 80-year-old book, super profound. And then the last one, if I was saying, hey, you've got one book, it'd be 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Just live life based off that.
Yeah, it's like the Bible of effectiveness. You basically have 3 categories of maturity. You've got dependence, which is, you need your parents to cover your bills to get through the day, or you need the government to cover your bills to get through life. And, as long as you're dependent, you don't control your own destiny. If you're dependent on the whims and the, charity of others.
Mm-hmm.
And then there comes a time in our lives, hopefully, where we become economically self-reliant. And there's this guy named Nitin Nori, who's the dean of the Harvard Business School, and he was talking about capitalism. He was doing a podcast with Goldman Sachs. He was talking about capitalism, and he's like, people will say what they want to say about capitalism, but over the last 30 years, there's been over 1 billion people that have gone from poverty to middle class, over 1 billion. And it's because of capitalism. And he said the truest form of dignity that you can give to another human being is to teach them to be economically self-reliant. And so once somebody can pay their own bills and they've got a skill that they can, get by in the world without their mom, without their dad, without the government, without charity, there's a level of pride and a level of confidence. And you see this all the time in your job. This was the spiritual side of doing door-to-door sales, was seeing somebody like you that when we first met, you're dependent on your parents and on just kind of, you're still a kid.
Yeah.
And then something switches where all of a sudden you get a skill and you never go back. And it's like you took the blue pill and you just never see the world the same. And this pride that you have, that I don't need to ask from anybody else, that I'm independent.
Yeah.
And
it's a sense of control. It's a sense of you learn to understand that you can make excuses and people might buy them, but at the end of the day, everything that's happening to you is happening because of you.
It's a sense of pride. Like you can look yourself in the mirror and be proud. You can, square up your shoulders and it's dignity. And that's what, Nitin Nori said. He said the truest form of dignity that you can give to another person is to teach them to be economically self-reliant. But then there's a third level of maturity, which is interdependence, which means not only do you have enough to take care of yourself, that you can take care of others and you can give back to the community and you can give back to society. When stuff breaks down, it's when you have somebody that's dependent, whether emotionally dependent or financially dependent, that is with somebody that's, when you have two people that are dependent and try to be together, it's just chaos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you play off each other's insecurities
toxic.
and weaknesses, and it's toxic. But when you have two people that are independent that choose to be interdependent, that's where the magic happens. But you have to like be independent before you can choose to be interdependent.
100%.
Anyway, so that's that third book, and that's
yep, 7 Habits.
Yep,
I love that. I love that. So basically, my biggest goal, I was thinking, I did a lot of like. I'm super lucky to have you on here, but more importantly, the point of this podcast is to go and like literally you specifically are what inspired me to ever want to do something like this. A lot of people followed you that I sat down with that were super inspiring and really, really helped me and shape my life to what it is now.
Yeah.
But like very specifically you. So I've been thinking like, okay, what do I want to go and like give people out of this? Because I've been lucky enough to have 150 of these sit downs with you by a fire with a cold drink out of the fridge that I stocked. And I want other people to go and get the most like where did Casey provide the most value for me, and how can I go and hopefully just put that onto a platform where other people can get it as well. And I realized the first thing that you do for anyone you come in contact with, and I was looking back on the other podcast where people had talked about how you've influenced them, is you inspire them. Like, and that's why the bio is so important. It's like you go and you inspire people, which is really cool. And then the second thing that you do is you really put creating your dream life into a very simple step-by-step. Like, it's really not difficult. It's hard because it takes a lot of discipline, right? But it's not difficult. There's nothing difficult to what you've gone and done, and you weren't handed anything, but you've done a few things religiously.
Yeah.
So what I want to get out of it, I want everyone to go and be inspired, obviously, and relate to you and all of that. But just as important, that's why I asked for those 3 books, is like I want them to like have action steps that I was lucky enough to have.
Yep.
The next thing when I think back, like, okay, what changed my life like through and through, like, and continues to today that I know you still do. And this part to me was crazy because as I was prepping, I was thinking, I went back, I was ripping into my old journals, like boxes that are in my garage that I haven't opened in years, actually.
Yep.
And I go back and I was reading my top 10 from 2019, 2018, 2017, 2020, and I'm like, holy crap. And it's something I've done. That's one thing I've done consistently.
Yep.
That when I started reading, like once I started to look at life with that bigger picture and like I can actually do something worthwhile while I'm here, you had me start doing what's called top 10. I want you to dive into it. I obviously can touch on it a little bit, but like you had me do what's called top 10. What is that? What's top 10?
So top 10, I actually don't do it anymore, which is crazy. But for a lot of years, the point was
You might need to start doing it again.
I do.
I think you could be going bigger.
Like if I were to tell you what I'm doing now, you'd think I'm like crazy town because I like.
Let's go with top 10.
I've kind of gone off the rocker a little bit, but like, so top 10. The principle behind it is you are the author of your future. The things have 2 creations. You have a spiritual creation, then you have a physical creation. And so the spiritual creation is dreaming up the dream. And then the physical creation is going and doing the work to make that dream reality. But it makes so much sense, like when you think about architecture. Like think about just like grabbing a ton of materials and just going out and trying to build like a skyscraper in New York. And it's like, that just seems so asinine. You would never do that. You would go, work with an engineer, and you would work with an architect, and you would build this perfect plan down to the screws.
Yeah.
Before you physically went out and organized the metal and the workers and everybody to go build that building. And if you build the plan right, you're going to get a beautiful building. And it's the same thing with our life. If you can go build, like so much of success in life is actually identifying what you want and having an opinion. And, with art or with life, it's an art and it's a science. The science is like, these are the fundamentals. These are the habits. These are the rituals that you have to do. A equals B, A plus B equals C every single time. It's like the law of gravity, and there's some of the stuff that's just a science.
Yeah.
But the art side is that all of us are different, and all of us are lit up by different things, and all of us have different passions and purposes. And that's where you kind of have to go identify what matters to me. And so many people never go through that process of actually saying, this matters to me. This is something I want. Either they're scared to say it or they just haven't spent the time. And so the top 10, it's a simple ritual that I did every day for a lot of years. And, when I say I don't do it, I'll do it, once a week or something. But I did it every day, sometimes twice a day for a lot of years. And basically what it is you just list the 10 biggest goals in your life from scratch. So you never reference the previous day, list them out, and then I erase them.
Yep.
And the whole point is if somebody wakes you up at 2 a.m., you should be able to list these things. And when you get to that point, they're seared into your subconscious brain. And that's when like the world starts moving to make magic happen for you, because just when you're not thinking, you're thinking about these things.
Yeah.
And so, when I hit one of those top 10, I would just replace it with a new top 10. And so it's this principle of like always having stuff that fires you up, that gets you going. So I'll tell you what I'm doing now. I'll wake up and I'll meditate. I have a specific ritual that I'll do every morning. It's Tony Robbins meditation.
The priming?
Yep. I'll do it every morning. And then I'll do 3 questions. And I started off with 10 answers. Now I'm at like 60.
Per question?
I'm 60, 30, 30. And I'll rotate through a number of questions. But the first one is, who am I? And it sounds so simple. It sounds like the most simple, but it's actually the most profound. We act according to the way that we see ourselves. We will not, the way that you dress today is that somewhere along the line you decided this is who I am.
Tony Robbins says the most powerful force in a human being is acting in alignment with their identity.
Yeah, and whether it's your religion, if I'm a conservative person or if I'm a liberal person, yeah, I'm smart or I'm dumb. I'm handsome or I'm not. And like we have these beliefs and we have these things that we get when we're little kids, and they screw us up really bad. We have these self-limiting beliefs that if you don't go root them out, almost like weeds in the garden, that they'll end up impeding the what you do in life. And so on a daily basis, I will list from scratch my identity, who I am. And it started off with 10 answers and now it's 60. And it's amazing how just doing this from scratch, just like you would do the top 10,
you get to create your identity.
I'm rewriting my software.
Yeah.
I'm saying when I'm not thinking, this is what I'm thinking. And it's the most flattering things that I can say about myself. I'm smart. I'm passionate. I'm a force for good. I'm a force for God. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a founder. I have an unshakable financial foundation. I'm kind. I'm committed. I'm determined. I'm resolute. I'm joyful. I'm peaceful. I'm happy. And it's just listing these things out, and then I forget them. And then the second one that I'll list on a daily basis is what gets me excited. And I'll list out 30 answers to that question. And it's amazing how just listing what gets you excited, your body releases endorphins. And like you think about the Christmas principle. When you're a little kid and you're just thinking about Christmas, and just thinking about it gets you excited.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are the 30 Christmases that I have coming up? My personal Christmases,
Mm-hmm.
It could be, a hunt that I'm going on. It could be a golf trip that I'm going on. It could be a business deal that I'm working on. It could be, a romantic date with my wife. It could be whatever, And again, it's completely subjective, but knowing what gets you excited matters, because those are the logs that you put on the fire of motivation. Like if you have stuff that just lights you up, you will never have a motivation problem. You'll never have something that you can't get off the couch. People ask me all the time, hey, why do you still do it? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've got 1,000 reasons why I still do it. I've got all sorts of stuff that lights me up. And then the last one, I'll rotate between 2 questions. What are my biggest opportunities? So the Peter Drucker, he's a real famous he's the father of modern management theory. Written 50-plus books, kind of shaped the way that we think about management and business. He's passed away now, but he has a book called The Effective Executive. And in that book, he says the effective executive, they focus their time on opportunities and not problems. That they feed opportunities and they starve problems. And so for me, I want to be very deliberate on what are my biggest professional opportunities and make sure that I give my best time and my best energy to my biggest opportunities. And then what are my biggest opportunities as a husband, as a dad, as an athlete, as a scholar, as a disciple of Christ, as a community member?
Yeah.
And there's 2 to 3 answers that it's like, this is the thing that is my biggest. There's a lot of things I could do.
Yeah.
But if I do this thing, it'll give me the biggest bang for my buck. And just having that top of mind.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, like, when you're getting 100 things thrown at you, what do you say yes to and what do you say no to? And it's, we're doing this podcast today, and I've got a lot of things that are on my schedule, and I have a short week. And I'm saying no to some things to say yes to this thing, because at some point along the way, I identified relationships matter to me. And adding value to people matters to me. And it's a higher opportunity or priority than whatever I was going to do. And so it allows me, like, in my decision-making process to say yes to the better thing more consistently. But if I haven't, like, gone through that mental process in my mind, then a lot of times you say yes to stuff you shouldn't say yes to.
Yeah.
And, and you put off. Most of it's like simple stuff with my kids. It's like, if I've identified the most important thing that I can do is put my kids to bed, and I have a call or I've got something that comes up during that time, and I just say no. I just say, yeah,
it's not even a decision.
I've got an appointment, but I can do it after. My appointment is I'm putting my kids to bed.
Yeah.
But I've decided this matters a lot to me.
Yeah.
But if you haven't decided, you're going to get pushed to the thing that's the most pressing. So anyway, that's kind of what it's the top 10 has evolved to over time.
Yeah, it's gotten more intense for sure. I love that. And just touching on that before I go back, and a funny story with that, but basically what you're saying in very, very simple terms is where your focus goes, your energy flows. And if you can go and control your focus, especially beginning of the day, your morning ritual, you are focusing on who you are, like the ideal version of yourself, crafting that identity. You're focusing on your biggest opportunities, what gets you excited. You don't really have any more focus to give to all the negative stuff that happens, because I think something that's really important to realize, the same amount, if not more, negative or trying or hard things happen to you as everybody else. And I think a lot of people, even myself at times, you go and you look at these people that are in these key positions, or these people who are just dominating in their space or just in life, financially, whatever it may be, and you're like, oh, something is different for them than it is for me. And I don't think that's the case. I think the case is, and from my knowledge and my experiences, they do things differently. They occupy their mind differently. They're focused differently, so on and so forth, which is really, really cool. Touching on top 10, though, what was crazy is I was reading back, and I opened up a journal. I think it was 2019 is when I opened it up from. And I also went back in our texts. I went back in my notes. And I remember very, very specifically when I was going to college, I had never made good money. I was 18 years old, and one of my top 10, you had me send them to you, which I think was one of the best things you ever did, because I sent my list. And the craziest part about top 10, the first 2 weeks of doing it, it was so hard. I sat for like 15 minutes trying to think of 10 goals. And that's alarming. The fact that I was an 18-year-old and I couldn't just spit out 10 goals that are like, yeah, these are the top 10 most important things to me. I couldn't even think of them. And over the first 2 weeks, they changed multiple times, because you made me delete them and then rewrite them.
Yep.
Right? And I was like, holy crap, they're changing. And then after about 2 weeks, it became very, like, it was ingrained in my brain. You could have woken me up and I could have.
When it becomes the same top 10 every day, that's when like, it's like a magnifying glass and you've got the sun. And, like, if you put that over, like, a leaf, it'll focus that energy that's just coming down generally, but that magnifying glass focuses it into enough heat to actually burn a leaf.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing with, if you can focus that energy on one thing, it ends up becoming extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And that's where you move the world. That's where you actually, like, go create your life.
Yeah.
But if you haven't done it, you don't have the resolve, and you don't have the focus, and you don't have like the decisiveness to be able to say yes, like very deliberately. Like you can say yes to big choices like immediately because you've already decided a long time ago. It's like
it's been in your brain every day for the last 6 months.
This is a yes for me every time.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love that. And then looking back to something really key that you did, which is like I think one of those things that's very unique to the most successful people I know. I sent you my top 10. I remember this so specifically because it was like a very scary, I guess. I sent you my top 10. I was 18 years old, and like somewhere on the list was make 6 figures by 25. Like that was my goal.
Yep.
You responded faster than I've ever seen anyone respond to anything, or faster than you ever had responded to me. And you said 25 ? Like basically calling me out like that is not a worthy goal. Like change that to 21. Right. And you called me out on it, and it was really cool. I was like, okay, I'll change it. And I was like, at first I was terrified, and then like ended up by 19, check that one off.
Yep.
Right. 6 years earlier than what I had originally thought. So I think a really, really key thing to keep in mind is how big you can really think, because even yours.
There's that. I mean, I deal with that. Like, that's the magic of actually documenting your goals. Is, you know, when you have time, you go back and you reference, and you can just see personal growth. And like I go back 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, and I see like the goals that I set 10 years ago, and I'm like, these are so base level. Like this feels so amateur.
Yeah.
But back then, it was everything to me. It was as big as I could dream. Like, it was like the horizon.
Yeah.
Where now that stuff's easy.
Yep.
But I think that's like the life lesson is that we get better. If we focus on something and work on it, that we're going to get better over time. And so the point is to have processes and habits and rituals and systems that are aligned with your priorities.
Yeah.
And so step number 1 is figure out where you want to go. And then step number 2 is go build, habits and rituals that are going to get you there. Because the romance is going to wear off. You think about marriages, and it's like 50% of them fail. Like, what percentage of that 50% raised their hand the first day they got married and said, man, I hope we make it? You know what I mean? Very few.
Yeah.
But half of them don't work. And, so it's easy to like get caught up in the romance. What's hard is to like go keep the romance for a lifetime. That takes like consistent work over time. And the same romance is, with your job or with your kids or with business partners or with your church or your religion.
Yeah.
It's like whatever you're doing, you have to work at it for it to be meaningful and for it to be real for you. And so, the habits and rituals are everything.
I think that
the plan is nothing without an average plan with great habits will give you great results.
Yeah.
A great plan with terrible habits, you're not going to accomplish your plan. Yep.
And I think that's honestly one of the biggest downfalls, especially with people in my generation, my age. The biggest downfall is like immediate gratification. Like I've watched so many people with so much talent that just don't stick with things through the good, the bad, the ugly, and they don't have.
Take the investment world. Like, how many people just lost their tails in crypto and meme stocks? And this was one that I was just, when I knew it was like peak, the top. I was teaching at BYU, and there was a kid there that was going to go out and sell. And I was so pumped for him, for that same principle of like, you're going to go learn a skill set that makes you economically self-reliant. Like, you're going to go from dependence to independence. And, that's a big life jump.
Yeah.
And so I see him at the end of the summer, and I see him at a sports game, and I'm like, hey, how'd it go? He's like, I didn't actually go out. I got this check from the government, and I put it into GameStop, and I made like $60K. And I'm going to go trade full time. And I'm just like, oh no. Like, life just taught you that checks show up in the mail without work. And that when you put something into an investment, you're going to 10X in 3 months. And I'm like, that's going to be a very hard lesson to unlearn. And you're like never going to do the hard thing because life has taught you that there's an easier road, and that's just not true. And, I actually don't have any idea what happened to that kid.
Yeah.
But my assumption is he's still chasing
the easy route
because it came so quick. You know what I mean? And that's the tragedy is like, this view of instant gratification. It's a false narrative. And, the law of the farm is how life really works. That you reap in proportion to what you sow and nothing more.
Yep.
And also that seasons matter and doing the right thing in the right sequence matters a lot.
So I think you just literally hit it right on the head, but like the fix all to that and what I if I could like go and just get something into my little brother's head or my own head or anyone that's trying to go and figure things out, it's like choose hard. Like a lot of times I meet with people or you're recruiting and you have people and they're like, oh, this, like, all I hear is like, I want the easy, quick route. Like, I want the easy, quick route. And I lose people to what I do because I can't go and tell them, yeah, it's the easy, quick route. This is probably the hardest thing you can do. And it could take a lot of time. Best thing you could do. And something about you've always done it. Like, and I guess I didn't even really think about this until right now. You literally have always chosen hard. You put yourself in some of the most uncomfortable positions that you don't need to be in. Like, you don't need to take time to come be on the podcast at all because, again, it goes back to what's important to you. You don't need to go be a professor at BYU and teach entrepreneurship. You don't need to do a lot of what you do, but you do go and choose hard a lot of the time. Where do you go and get that? Like,
but I think those things specifically have to do with life philosophy. Like, and for me, my life philosophy is that I'm fulfilled, I'm happy when I'm growing and when I'm giving. And so, like, when it's Tony Robbins is like the biggest influence for me. And he talks about business being a spiritual game.
Yeah.
And I get my spirituality out of serving people like that. That's when I feel the closest to God. And so, like, for me, teaching at BYU, it's not work. It's the opposite of work.
It's like That's
like when I'm the closest to God is when I'm serving people and when I'm connecting and when I'm adding value. And I'd say this is the exact same thing. Like when I can contribute to somebody's life, that's when I feel fulfilled. And so, like, it allows me to say yes to this stuff consistently because I just know this is my passion. This is my purpose. This is why I'm here on the earth. I went to Black Panther the other day with my family. And for some reason, like, I can't remember the main actor that just passed away.
From the last movie.
Yeah, but he died at 43. And I'm 40. And I'm just looking at this guy who's like the peak of his career. And he's gone. And I'm like, if you have like music to play, you better play it. Like, you can't think I'm going to be here for 50 years or 60 years. Like, there's examples all around of us, the people who go before their time. And so I it's experiences like that I'm just like, if I have something that I need to say to somebody, I need to say it. If there's like a kind word that I've been meaning to say, or there's somebody I need to apologize to, or if there's a pursuit that I want to go after, you better do it now or you're just not going to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, dude, so the title of the podcast is Today's the Day. And that's been, and you might not be aware of it, that's been like a catchphrase saying I've just rocked with since meeting you. Where that originated, I walked into your office one day. We did a sit-down, a book report in your office, and no one even knows this. Not even the recording team knows this. Nobody knows this. Today's the day, like, that's something I kind of coined, and like I love to go and say, you had this quote written on top of your whiteboard. You probably don't even remember it. It might have been a book you're reading, and it's all I have is now. That was it. Like that, you had that in quotations, and I was staring at that while we were doing a book report for 30 minutes, and like it stuck with me in a weird way. Today's the day to me just means like this is all you've got every day. So if you're going into your mundane everyday business day, go and make the most impact you can make because you have no idea if you've got tomorrow at all. And you literally just like put that more beautifully than I possibly could have in a really cool way. If you have music to play, go and play it. I love that. Like that's.
No, it's like the beauty in life is that. We had this, I had my 40th birthday party the other day, and my wife does this, like the best surprise, she completely like
amazing event. She
it
just
was-
set the bar for everyone's.
It was the most amazing event. But there's like little things that like I like just light me up, and one of them's handwritten notes.
Yeah.
And so she goes to everybody that I care about in life, and has them write me a note. And so I'm just like, and she gives me like a little piece of them in the morning. And I read them and I'm just crying by myself. And I'm just like, this is, if I died today, it'd be a pretty good life. And then, go through my day. And then I go to this surprise party. It's up at Sundance. And everybody's there. And it's like all these people in my life that just care about so much. And I walk through there and I'm like, this is heaven. Like, this has got to be what heaven's like. That you show up and it's everybody that you love, And I'm going through it and I'm just thinking about it and I'm like, every once in a while you have like these little glimpses in life, like these little stops where you can zoom out and you can say, am I on track? Am I, doing kind of the work that God put me on this work to do? Am I accomplishing my potential? And I think like birthdays with a 0 on them are like just that. Like they're, just kind of these like little excuses where you're just like, you look back and say, hey, have I done what I want to go do? And then it's looking forward and saying, hey, what do I want to go do in the future, And where am I off? And so anyway, it was just so fun for me to be able to like share that with the people that I cared about. But the point that I got from it is just you got to be present and you gotta live in the moment because you don't know how many of them you have, and hopefully we have a lot of them, but there's
No guarantee.
There's no guarantee, and all of us have friends who passed way before their time, and you want to make sure that you make the impact that you want to go make.
No, 100%. And like, yeah, that event was amazing, but it was like it was no surprise. It's like, again, every guest we've had on here, specifically anyone who knows you, like people would kill for you whether you know it or not, more people than you know. And I think really the root of that, and probably why you could feel so overwhelmingly like loved and everything like that, is because you have always approached everyone with going and giving more than you take in every situation.
Oh, but I believe that. I believe you get out of life what you send out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you're sending out good,
yep,
good comes back to you kind of in abundance. It's that principle of casting your bread on the waters and it comes back tenfold. And it's like, that's been my experience. And the people that I know that are the wealthiest and the most fulfilled are also the most generous. And that's just been my experience in life.
But they have been before they had it. Like that's the most important part of that, because I hear that a lot.
It's the widow's mite. Like it's you give all that you have, and it doesn't matter what that is, but you don't show up in abundance. You're abundance before you have abundance. You're abundant before you receive abundance. And
exactly.
That's just how it works.
Exactly, which I think is so key. That, I mean, touching on Tony Robbins and exactly what we're talking about. My first Tony Robbins event, I don't know if it was yours, that Business Mastery in 2019. We went, and there was two things that stood out to me more than anything, other than business as a spiritual game. There were two things. The first thing he just harped on, like it's what he wrapped everything up with, is like the secret to living is giving. Like, give until it hurts in every situation. And at that event, I was surrounded by people who were on a totally different playing field than me, including you. I was 1/20th from an income spectrum, 1/20th or less than where you were at. But it's like he touched on it. Doesn't matter where you're at, as long as you're giving until it hurts, you'll always get it back. And that's been like something I've carried through everything in any situation any chance I get. If I can give more than I take, I always do. And that's I watched you do it by example in a way bigger way than I was able to do it at the time. But that was, and then the other thing that he touched on, which is I'm curious about, kind of pivoting a little bit, otherwise you're going to make me cry. He hit on the craziest concept that has blown my mind, and I try and continue to emulate. And sometimes it takes like a re-up going to a Tony Robbins event to realize it and go and embody it again. Peak state was something I never thought about, understood, had terms for, or knew how to go and like cultivate.
Yep.
what kind of role does that play? What do you do to go and get into peak state? What is that? Like, what is peak state? And then how do you go and apply it?
It matters a lot. And just like, for you, the awareness of managing my energy and being responsible for the energy that I bring to the table when I show up, and how do I show up? And, I have habits and rituals every day to get in the proper emotional state to show up. And I do that by meditating. I do that by doing the questions that I went through.
Yep.
I work out every morning. I cold plunge every morning. Like, there's stuff that I do that, creates the mental and emotional strength and the certainty that allow me to show up in my day properly. And then, trying to align habits and rituals with it, where it's like, when I'm coming home, I try to put my phone away and just not touch it.
Yeah.
And identifying, hey, what's the most important things with my kids, and making sure that I'm present when I'm with my kids, or I'm present when I'm with my wife. And again, it's a battle. Like,
it's hard.
All of us will screw it up every day, but it's about being self-aware that, like, this is a real thing and I'm responsible for it. All of us are around people that have terrible energy and they pull us down.
Yep.
And all of us have been around people that are just like electric, and they just light us up every time we're around them, and we're attracted to the people that bring good energy to the room. And so that one to me is like, it's a real thing. When I'm going through, hey, my identity, there's a lot of things when I'm listing out who I am that have to do with my state, my emotional state.
Yeah.
And, using that Tony Robbins language of a beautiful state, not just a peak state, but a beautiful state.
Yep.
And what would be encompassed in a beautiful state? And it's joyfulness, it's happiness,
Yeah.
it's passionate, it's resolute, it's determined, it's deliberate, it's, all these, it's certain,
Yeah.
And then you contrast with the opposite.
Yeah.
It's fearful, it's unhappy, it's depressed, it's sad, it's, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
it's like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to try to choose to be in this one most of the time.
As much of the time as you can.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's been like my favorite. And it was the craziest thing to learn too, because when you go to Tony Robbins, anyone who's been will know what I'm talking about, and anyone who hasn't is just going to say it sounds crazy. Was that your first event?
That was my first event. It was life-changing.
Yeah, do you remember going? First day, you get there, it's freezing cold, 6 a.m. I was 19. We were the whole group, right?
Yep.
And it's 55 degrees. The lights turn off, strobe lights turn on, and this EDM banger just starts going. And at first, you're like, oh, he's getting us hyped. But then you realize everyone in the room who's attended an event is on their chair. There's a 65-year-old next to me swinging his freaking bandana around. I'm still sitting. Our whole group is still sitting because it was our first time, if I remember correctly. And it's just nuts. Like, it's nutty, nutty, nutty. And then he goes into explaining the science behind, like, dude, physiology controls everything. If you can get your physical state elevated, your mental state elevated, your emotional state elevated, then you can go and observe more, learn more, and produce at a much higher level. Like, state's so sick, and anyone who hasn't gone and looked into it or anything, I would say.
If you dig into cells, he says something where he says, if two people meet and there's rapport, the person with the most certainty will persuade the other person. Like, if you like each other, if there's any sort of like relation, and you're completely certain about something, you're going to win over the argument or the the conversation. And so a lot of it for me is, all of us have fear, all of us have doubt, all of us have, apprehension, and it's going through and rooting that out.
Yeah.
And getting absolutely certain about the outcome.
And that's
just
a beautiful
that when
state.
I show up specifically with my team and like people that I'm leading, they need to know that, like, we're going to war and we're winning the war. And there's no skid marks. There is no going back. We burned our boats, and this is done. This is finished.
Decision's already made.
And by that certainty, people are like, well, let's go. And you persuade people that are on the fence.
Yeah.
But if you show up in a low state and there's uncertainty, then it creates doubt in the people that you're leading. And so all of us that are in leadership roles, you got to go do that personal work before you show up if you want to be an effective leader, if you want to have influence.
1,000%. I love that. Yeah, dude, it's so good. There's so many freaking nuggets. And I guess kind of one thing we've been honestly I could talk for 3 hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. I know you took a lot to come here, but one thing that's incredibly impressive about you, and I was sitting back and like looking at kind of what you've done. I met you when your identity was pretty wrapped, and maybe not personally, but from the outside looking in, your identity was very wrapped in one thing that you had dominated at. You were the best to ever do direct to home leadership sales, anything involved. You were the top position you could ever be in. And what I've noticed with a lot of people is a lot of people have one thing they do, like a lot of successful people have one thing they dominated in, and then when that identity is stripped of them or when they move on from that, they kind of like lose everything that really got them to where they were at in that aspect. One thing that's really unique about you, you've carried that into every single project that you've gone and chosen to do past that. And in talking to you in the past, you talk about how there's seasons for everything. And I think a lot of people don't look at it that way. They look at a beginning of something, an end of something, and then they get lost after that. Whereas you have a really unique perspective, and I want you to talk about that a little bit and kind of how you've realized that and how you also go and apply that every day. Whatever you're in right now is going to come to an end at some point. Right? And at that point, you need to be able to go and pivot and move on to the next season. But a lot of people don't do that, even successful people who dominate in what they do. Like, where did you learn to realize, like, okay, and how was that transition actually from being at Vivint? You were at Vivint 13 years. Like, that's no short amount of time. And that was pretty all-consuming. I remember how much time you put in, right? Like, there wasn't really time for much else. How do you go and what was that like? Maybe it's not as big a deal as I think. But.
No, it was a real thing. You take like professional athletes and or Olympic athletes or an astronaut that have like this Herculean like effort. I'm gonna go to the moon, or I'm gonna go to the Olympics. And there's like documented studies about like once that's over, there's like this dip because it's like my whole life was dedicated to this one thing, and now it's like what gets me going? I've got to the top of the mountain, and so some of the things that have really helped me. It wasn't hard transitioning from Vivint, from like it was time. It was for sure. It was time to go. I felt like I'd done everything that I could do there, and it was time to move on to the next chapter. What was hard was I got a lot of like human value. I got a lot of my identity off of people needing me. And like the day that I left, my phone stops ringing. And I would get like 80 texts a day. It was just buzzing with people needing me, and I got addicted to it. And what I realized through that process was they didn't need me. They needed the role that I was in. Like the role that I was in could solve a problem for them. It could get pay fixed. It could help them with a recruit. It could, and once I was out of that role, whoever stepped into that role, that's who they were texting because that person could solve their problem. Like golf was super helpful to actually have like a new hobby or pursuit that challenged me. And then also, just getting into like a lot of the identity stuff was really helpful. I realized like I'm not a Vivint vice president. That's not who I am. That's something that I did, and I love doing it, but that's not who I am. I'm, a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm a son of God, and I'm a entrepreneur, and I'm a founder. And
it goes back to the identity.
Yeah, and it's going back and saying, that isn't my identity. That's something that I did, and I love doing that. But that's not who I am. Like, I'm this wherever I go, and that's been really helpful, but I've actually had to like add new things. So like part of like my identity stuff is I'm a professional investor. I am,
you go replace it with different roles, and
it's putting in new professional roles that when I first said them, they made me really uncomfortable because I wasn't good at it. So I had to go rewrite my software and saying, this is who I am. And there's models that you look at. The guys who fired me up were the Kobe Bryants and the Steve Youngs and the Shaquille O'Neals and the Magic Johnsons and like these pro athletes that had this niche career that were able to go rewrite their story and be equally as, dominant in the business aspect after they played in the game. And I wanted, wanted that. I didn't want my story to be that I'm a one-trick pony.
And have it end.
Yeah, I wanted to, have it be that when I was in high school, I gave my all to sports. And when I was on my mission, I gave my all to my mission. And when I did door-to-door sales, I tried to be the best at that.
Yeah.
And everything that I go into, I'm going to go commit to it, and I'm going to go try to be the best that I can be at it, And so, anyway, that's kind of the way that I think about it, and I think it's helped me transition. I've seen a lot of my friends that have transitioned out that have really struggled with the transition. I think a lot of it is that a lot of their identity is still tied to that position or that role.
Yeah.
And when that gets taken from them, they feel like, I'm lost. I don't have anything, because that was, they got a lot of security and a lot of happiness out of that position.
Yeah, that's so unique, and it like, you can see it every day in people as they transition or whatever it may be from any position they're currently in to a different one. It's like a lot of people have identity crisis probably because they wrap their identity in it, which that makes perfect sense. That's really, really cool. Dude, again, literally, like I could talk for hours and hours and hours, and I definitely 1,000% want to do more episodes with you where we go and break down more in depth. But I think the most important thing, again, like I said, coming into it, which you've crushed out of the park, like as far as being inspired, there's no more inspiring human being that I could sit down with for people to go and be like, holy crap, like he really went and did it. And then also nobody knows how to go break down how to do this and teach other people how to go replicate what they've done better than you. You are world class at going and creating people or helping people strive to go and hopefully one day get to close to where you're at, right? Which is super unique.
The thing that fires me up in life is every single one of us has had a leader in our life that believed in us more than we believed in ourselves at a juncture where we could have gone either way. And that leader, changed our life. And all of us can think back. It was a high school coach. It was a mission president. It was a professor. It was a dad. It was somebody, my buddy's dad, whatever. Yeah. Somebody saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself and gave you permission to dream bigger, and you crossed the chasm, and it changed your life. And, the idea of being able to be that person for other people is super inspiring to me. I'm like, what would be a more meaningful life than to be able to do that consistently? And, the job that you do, you have the opportunity consistently to see greatness in people that they don't see in themselves. And when you do that, that's the good stuff in life. That's what, if you're thinking hey, my life is going to be, how am I going to measure my life? How am I going to say this is a success or it's not a success? One of the key things is, how did I treat people? And did I make people better or did I make them worse? And in the interactions. And so even just you saying that, there's not a nicer compliment than you could give me than that, I made a difference in your life. I'm like, what's better than that, than the world, than to be able to touch people's lives in a positive way.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it shows, everything you do just vocalizes that and shows that. So again, thank you. And I know I'm definitely not the only one by any means. Dude, this has been freaking gold. To close it out, is there anything, if there was one last thing, most important thing, something, if someone just scrolled to the end of this and saw the end of it where that is a message you'd want to go and get across, that would go and help the most amount of people, what would it be?
This probably isn't the thing that would help the most amount of people, but this is a habit and ritual that I've added in my life over the last couple of years that's added tremendous quality of life.
I love it.
Whatever your number is, for me, it's $100. And I have a stack of hundreds, and I look for opportunities on a daily basis to light up somebody that wasn't expecting it. And it has brought so much happiness in my life. And the challenge would be for everybody through this holiday season. You don't need to do it forever, but for 30 days, through the December season, take the number that's right for you, give until it hurts, put it, on your person at all times and look for opportunities to give it to somebody who's in need, and you're just going to see magic happen in your life. I had a couple of them. I went back into this executive program at Harvard, and DoorDash is like my go-to, because anybody that is delivering for DoorDash, they're doing it because they need the money.
Yep.
That it's a side hustle to go help them pay the bills or get by. And a lot of times it's somebody that doesn't speak English, that, you know, it's a way for them to make money and have a job without, you know, the requisite skills that a lot of stuff you would need. And so my heart, you know, I could give you 100 DoorDash stories, but I was in Boston, and we ordered some food, and this guy shows up, African-American guy, and he's got his girlfriend or his wife in the front seat. It's Friday night, late. And I just have this impression. I'm like, it's Friday night late, and this guy is delivering. He needs some help. Super cool, gets out. He's talking to me. I said, hey, do you have, like, Venmo? He's like, oh, I don't. I'm like, are you willing to walk, you know, back to my dorm with me? It's kind of a haul. It's probably a block. And he's like, yeah, sure.
His girlfriend's in the car, like, what the hell's going on?
She's in the front seat, and he walks back with me. And anyway, I had a stack. I gave him $1,000. And I never saw him take it. But you just have this feeling that it's like, you know, God is talking to me. And, you know, I answer. You go answer the call. And I just had this, you know, picture in my mind of him walking back and sitting down, you know, with his girlfriend or his wife and pulling out $1,000. And I don't know what the outcome was, but it can't be bad. You know, if he's delivering, and there's got to be a need that, you know, that's not like a long-term solution, but it is grace, you know. I'm just telling you, if you want some abundance, if you want like good vibes over the holiday, and you want some abundance in your life, dude, I'm a mess. This is actually the good stuff. Anybody who knows me, this is like a once a conversation thing, so it's not unique to this. But if you want to like go have some abundance in your life over the holiday, go pull $1,000 out of your checking account, or go pull 500, or whatever the number is that it actually like matters to you. Put it in your account and like ask God to guide you. And I'm just telling you, like, I don't know, like, it doesn't matter what your spiritual beliefs are. You will have, like inspiration on who needs it. And you'll have, like, this magic experience.
That's the good stuff. No, I love that. Again, like, Case, I freaking love you, man. Thank you so much. There's no better way to close that out than just go and make sure everybody understands, especially holiday season. Give until it hurts everybody. Much love, Casey. Again, thank you so much,
thanks
man.
For having me, brother.
I love you, bro.